My name is Juan Navarro, and today we were talking about how the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement began in December 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks, a black seamstress, refused to cooperate with the segregation law. As she boarded a public bus in Montgomery, Alabama, she took a seat in the designated black row in the back. A few of the main people that were involved was Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Emmett Till. The primary objective was to restore the unity to the country and prevent new slave territories for the northern states on the one hand. So basically ending racism and stuff like that, etc. The civil rights movement lasted from about 1950 to around 1960 or further. There was many states involved, like Mississippi, a lot of the northern states, so Washington, Alabama. I'm pretty sure it was some of the northern states around Michigan, Ohio, and stuff like that. It was really throughout the whole United States of America. The civil rights movement was a struggle for social justice that took place for black Americans to gain equal rights under the law in the United States. So that is really the main reason it started, because people were being tired of getting assaulted from the white people, not only white people but other people, right? And they were tired of it. Jim Crow laws in 1868, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution gave black people equal protection under the law. In 1870, the 15th Amendment granted black American men the right to vote. Still, many white Americans, especially those in the South, were unhappy that people they once enslaved were now on or more or less equal playing field. Jim Crow's laws weren't adopted in the northern states. However, black people still experienced discrimination at their jobs or when they tried to buy a house or get an education. Also, prior to World War II, most black people worked as low-wage farmers, factory workers, domestics, or servants. By the early 1940s, where related work was booming, the most black Americans were given the better-paying jobs. They were also discouraged from joining the military. President Franklin Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802 on June 25, 1941. It opened national defense jobs and other government jobs to Americans regardless of race, creed, color, or nation or origin. As the Cold War began, President Harry Truman initiated a civil rights agenda and in 1948 issued Executive Order 9981 to end discrimination in the military. Rosa Parks had a big impact on this movement. In 1955, December 1st, she found a seat on the bus after work. Segregation law at the time seated black passengers must sit in designated seats at the back of the bus, and Parks was complied. It was when a white man got on the bus and couldn't find the seat, and there was 3 black passengers to give up their seat, but Parks refused, and she was arrested. Then Parks initiated the MIA to stage a boycott of the Montgomery bus system, and it lasted 381 days. On November 14, 1956, a Supreme Court ruled segregated seating was unconstitutional. On September 3, 1957, 9 black students, also known as the Little Rock Nine, are at Central High School to begin classes, but they were instead met by the Arkansas National Guard on order to Governor Orville Babbage and the screaming, threatening mob. The Little Rock Nine tried to again a couple of weeks later and made it inside, but had to remove for their safety, and violence ensued. Finally, President Dwight Eisenhower interpreted the order of federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine, and from classes of Central High, still the students faced constitutional harassment and prejudice. Even though all Americans had gained the right to vote, many southern states made it difficult for black citizens. They often required prospective voters of color to take literacy tests that were confusing, misleading, and nearly impossible to pass. And on September 9, 1957, President Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act of 1957 into law, the first major civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. It allowed federal prosecution of anyone who tried to prevent someone from voting. On February 1, 1964, college students took a stand against segregation in Greensboro, North Carolina, when they refused to leave a Woolworth's lunch counter without being served. Over the next several days, hundreds of people joined their cause in what became known as the Greensboro Sit-ins. On May 4, 1961, 13 Freedom Riders, 7 black and 6 white activists, mounted a Greyhound bus in Washington, D.C., embarking on a bus tour of the American South to protest segregated bus terminals. They were testing the 1960 decision by Supreme Court in Boynton versus Virginia that declared segregation of interstate transportation facilities unconstitutional. On August 28, 1963, the March on Washington, it was organized by the 10 civil rights leaders such as Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, and Martin Luther King Jr. King's I Have a Dream speech galvanized the national civil rights movement and became a slogan for equality, rights, and freedom. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 legislation initiated by President John F. Kennedy before his assassination into law on July 2nd of the year. King and other civil rights activists witnessed all the signing. The law guaranteed equal employment for all, limited to the use of voter literacy tests. On March 7, 1965, the civil rights movement in Alabama took an especially violent turn as 600 peaceful demonstrators participated in the Selma to Montgomery March to protest the killing of the black civil rights activist Jimmy Lee Jackson by a white police officer to encourage legislation to enforce the 15th Amendment. The entire incident was televised and became known as a Bloody Sunday. President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law on August 6, 1965. He took the Civil Rights Act of 1964 several steps further. The new law banned all voter literacy tests and prohibited federal examiners in certain voting jurisdictions. Then the white people became to get very furious, and on February 21, 1965, Unity founder Malcolm X was assassinated at a rally. On April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated on his hotel's room balcony. The Fair Housing Act became law on April 11, 1968, just days after King's assassination. It prevented house discrimination based on race, sex, national origin, and religion. It was also the last legislation enacted during the Civil Rights era. The Civil Rights Movement was an empowering yet precarious time for Black Americans. The efforts of civil rights activists and countless protesters of all races brought about legislation to end segregation, black voter suppression, and discriminatory employment and housing practices. That is it.